At just before 11 PM on the 3rd of April 2003, men of the Iraqi Special Republican Guard, a special protection force in Baghdad, are relaxing in trenches dug into the tarmac of Saddam International Airport to the southwest of the city. Hours earlier, American MLRS, conventional artillery, and F-16s and FA-18s pounded the Iraqi positions around the airport, sparking fears that an attack was imminent. Now, the Republican Guard commanders believe the danger has passed, and many are attempting to grab some sleep. The collapse of Baghdad's power grid has plunged the airport into complete darkness, causing some sentries to doze off at their posts. It seems as though the war will not come to Baghdad tonight. Suddenly, two loud explosions rock the airport, followed by the unmistakable growl of tank engines. A quick word from this week's sponsor, World of Tanks, a free-to-play online combat game where you can fight in 800 tank destroyers, artillery, light, medium and heavy tanks. Fight using your own tactics, rushing, ambushing or sniping your opponents across different terrains, such as open fields, steep hills, forests, deserts or urban centres. Feel like a real tank commander in an armoured thunder run in historically accurate models and vehicle characteristics, earning experience to modify and upgrade your tank. Join the 100 million global players by downloading World of Tanks using the link in the description. New players use the invite code COMBAT to get 7 free days of premium access, 250,000 credits, the Premium Tank Cromwell B, and 3 rental tanks for 10 battles each, the Tiger 131, T-78 and Type 64. If you're a returning player and have an account but haven't played World of Tanks in more than 30 days, you'll get 3 days of premium access, the 2D style bargain camouflage, 7-day rental of the Premium Tank Centurion Mk 5/1 RAAC, or 100,000 credit compensation if you already have this tank in your garage. M1A1 Abrams of Lieutenant Colonel Rock Marcone's Task Force 369 spill onto the cratered tarmac, having breached the 15-foot-high perimeter wall. The Special Republican Guard soldiers are caught by surprise. Their commanders have expected an airborne assault on the airport rather than an armoured attack, and are ill-prepared to deal with enemy tanks. As such, the runway is lined with anti-aircraft guns, but only one single platoon of T-72 tanks. The Abrams quickly engage the Iraqi T-72s, whose crews are completely blind in the darkness, while raining a hail of lead from their coax MGs and Commander's 50 cals on the Iraqi infantry. 3 T-72s are destroyed, with the final tank captured after a one-sided fight. Not a single T-72 gets off a shot at the American tanks. At 12:38 AM, another column of Abrams from Marcone's Task Force 369 breaches the airfield perimeter from the south, entering via a gate. The American attackers quickly begin to overwhelm the Iraqi infantry, who offer little resistance, destroying a large civilian airliner sitting at one of the terminals. Iraqi artillery hits the airfield, hoping to catch the Americans in the open, but this has little effect. By the morning, Marcone's men will have effectively taken control of Saddam International Airport and renamed it Baghdad International. It will take 2 more days to fully secure the area, which is littered with bunkers and tunnel complexes running underneath the airport. The assault on the airport is the first action of the ground assault on Baghdad. By the afternoon of the 4th of April, Najaf has been secured by the 101st Airborne, while the British forces in the south continue to squeeze the Iraqi defenders in Iraq's second largest city, Basra. On the 1st of April, the lead units of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force crossed the Tigris River and are now threatening the Iraqi capital. Major General Jim Mattis's 1st Marine Division is racing towards the outskirts of the city on the morning of the 4th of April. Dissatisfied with the progress of Colonel Joe Dowdy's 1st Regimental Combat Team, Mattis has relieved Dowdy of command. Mattis is determined to smash the Al-Nida Republican Guard Division defending the eastern perimeter of Baghdad, and will accept no delays. Colonel Joe Dunford's RCT-5 attacks along Highway 6 with Charlie Company of the 2nd Tank Battalion as the spearhead. Their objective is to follow the highway until they reach the Diyala intersection and then turn north to join their assigned route into the city, codenamed Route Green. A scout platoon of Humvees are in the lead, followed by Abrams tanks. Charlie Company approaches the outskirts of the town of Diyala, when 2nd Lieutenant Adam Markley in the lead Abrams is treated to an ominous sight. The Iraqis ahead have set oil fires in trenches dug on both sides of the highway, meaning the column of vehicles won't be able to see any enemies on their exposed flanks. The lead scout platoon is about to reach the Diyala intersection when they are hit by an ambush. Iraqi tracers and RPGs fly past the Humvees, and the scout's commander, Lieutenant Brian McPhillips, gives the order weapons free. McPhillips begins firing the .50 caliber machine gun on his Humvee when he is shot and killed by an Iraqi sniper. The call goes out over the radio, Scout 6 is down. With McPhillips' Humvee now defenceless, Corporal Derek Keller in the vehicle behind asks his driver to bring them alongside the lead Humvee at 30 miles per hour. Despite the battle raging around them, Keller leaps between the two moving Humvees and takes over the .50 caliber machine gun. The Scout Humvees armed with TOW anti-tank missiles and machine guns run the gauntlet while laying down suppressive fire. After a minute of intense fighting, the Scouts are ordered to the rear of the column. The more vulnerable Humvees pull over to allow the tanks to take point. It is not long before they too come under heavy enemy fire. As Charlie Company's armour reaches the Diyala intersection, a volley of RPGs flash through the black smoke. One RPG round strikes Markley's turret hatch and deflects inside the tank before exploding, killing Corporal Bernard Gooden and knocking Markley unconscious. Knowing that stopping will greatly endanger the exposed column in the kill zone, Charlie Company's commander, Captain Jeffrey Houston, orders his tanks to keep moving while firing on the hidden enemies. Captain Houston's Abrams is taking the brunt of the attack. One of the outboard fuel tanks catches fire, but the Abrams is designed to be able to sustain an outboard fuel tank fire without critical damage to the tank. However, just at this moment, the crew rotates the turret and knocks the flaming fuel into the engine's air intake valve. The tank automatically shuts down to prevent an explosion, but Houston and his men are now immobilized in the kill zone. Following his training, Houston orders his men to give him covering fire while he leaves the vehicle to find a new tank to command from. Houston, a direct descendant of the Texan general and statesman Sam Houston, jumps down and runs to the tank behind, while his crew target Iraqi infantry from the turret hatch and using the coaxial machine gun. Lieutenant Markley regains consciousness in the chaos of battle and realises the column has missed its turn. We have to turn around, we're only 4 clicks from Baghdad. Houston then returns to his tank and is giving his crew instructions when he is shot in the jaw. Seeing this, Lance Corporal Billy Peixoto runs to Houston and pulls him behind cover. Peixoto applies pressure to the wound while firing his 9mm sidearm. He will later be awarded the Bronze Star. As the column turns around, a fighter driving a truck bomb takes advantage of the chaos and speeds into the middle of the column next to an Abrams. The truck detonates right next to the tank, but the Abrams is unharmed and continues to fight. Another Marine, Sergeant Dwayne Rios, is standing in the exposed turret of his AAV when he is killed while 2nd Battalion is completing its U-turn. The column heads back towards their designated route while Captain Houston is evacuated by an ambulance. His disabled tank will have to be left behind. 3 Marines have been killed in the ambush and another 4 seriously wounded. The rest of Dunford's RCT-5 arrives and clears the town by the end of the day. The Marines are later surprised to find none of the ambushers in Diyala were members of the supposedly elite Al-Nida division. In fact, they are not even Iraqi citizens. Instead, inspections of the more than 100 bodies reveal these men to be Syrians, Egyptians, Yemenis, and Lebanese. They have come to Iraq to take part in a jihad declared against the coalition invasion. Baghdad will be the epicenter of this supposed jihad. Mattis's push through the outer defences to the east of Baghdad have set the stage for the battle for the city. The initial plan is simple. The US Army units will take all of Baghdad west of the Tigris River, while the Marine Corps will capture the east bank of the city. However, the question of how to avoid costly urban fighting within the Iraqi capital is a source of fierce debate. The commander of 5th Corps, Lieutenant General Scott Wallace, advocates for a methodical approach, where the capital will be surrounded and the Iraqi forces gradually worn down by air power in a process that will limit American casualties but could take weeks. However, General Buford Blunt of the 3rd Infantry Division and Major General Mattis of the 1st Marine Division opposed this strategy, arguing for a more aggressive and direct assault on the city. Blunt's 3rd Infantry Division has already occupied 2 of the designated staging areas just outside the capital, an opportunity that Blunt seeks to exploit before the Iraqi army can establish stronger defences. He informs General Wallace that he will be sending an armoured column through the heart of Baghdad to shock and demoralise the enemy into capitulating. Blunt believes that this tactic, known as a thunder run, is the key to winning the battle as quickly as possible. In the evening of the 4th of April, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Schwartz is summoned to the headquarters of the commander of 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 3rd Infantry Division, Colonel David Perkins. Perkins has already overseen a smaller thunder run in Najaf, which helped the 101st Airborne secure the city centre. Perkins gives Schwartz and the 1st Battalion of the 64th Armoured Regiment a new mission. I need you to attack north into Baghdad tomorrow morning at first light. Schwartz is stunned by his orders. His battalion will be the first American unit into the heart of the Iraqi capital, and his intelligence has no clear picture of enemy defences. You must be crazy, sir. I don't think so, and I'm coming with you. Schwartz is convinced that this mission will result in the death of many of his men, but he intends to carry out his orders. The 1st 64th Armour will leave its soft-skinned vehicles, such as support trucks, behind, and attack with 29 tanks, 14 Bradleys, and a handful of M113 APCs. It will be a carefully orchestrated demonstration of American armoured might, which will hopefully break the will of Saddam's army. But to General Blunt's superiors, it is merely reported as a reconnaissance in force. This attack is a risky proposition, which could either prove the viability of storming a city of more than 5.6 million inhabitants, or set the stage for a long and painful siege. At 6 AM on the 5th of April, the Thunder Run moves out, with Lieutenant Colonel Schwartz commanding from Alpha Company in the lead of the column, with Colonel Perkins accompanying from the middle. A-10 Warthogs are on station overhead, ready to attack enemy concentrations along the 6-lane highway, with air controllers on the ground standing by to relay coordinates. Despite the war, the citizens of Baghdad have been told by Iraqi officials that there is no threat to the city, and to go about their daily lives. As such, morning commuters are dumbfounded to see American tanks rolling down the highway towards the heart of the capital. Alpha Company comes across a group of Iraqi soldiers drinking tea at a checkpoint by the side of the road. Schwartz gives the order to open fire, and the Iraqis are so surprised that they fail to get a shot off before they are gunned down. The column moves on towards the heart of the city. However, unlike the unlucky men at the first checkpoint, other combatants react quickly, and a hail of RPG, recoilless rifle and small arms fire strike the lead vehicles. Tracers and rockets scream out of buildings and groves overlooking the highway, prompting a response from the American armour. Since the invasion began, Baghdad has been flooded with foreign fighters hoping to wage war against the coalition. These paramilitaries, along with the regular Iraqi army, Republican Guard and Fedayeen units, comprise 45,000 men, who intend to put up a stiff defence of the capital. The armoured vehicles move forward as planned, as the American gunners fire back. Schwartz and Perkins have set rules for the Thunder Run that must be strictly followed. The column will move at 9 miles per hour and will not stop under any circumstances. Bradleys are in the lead in order to use their higher rate of fire to suppress enemy positions. Harder targets will be passed off to the Abrams, which are to follow 55 yards behind. Each tank alternates the direction of its turret, so they can fire on both sides of the road. All of the crews have pre-positioned carbines, sidearms and grenades atop their turrets, in the event their vehicle is disabled. For 20 minutes, the Thunder Run continues north into increasingly heavy Iraqi fire. As the Abrams are passing a group of apartment buildings to the right of the highway, either a recoilless rifle round or a rare Iraqi anti-tank missile slams into Staff Sergeant Jason Diaz's tank, and explodes against the auxiliary power unit on the turret. All systems are normal, and the tank continues down the road and under an overpass. But after 500 yards, warning lights start flashing on the systems panel, and the tank groans to a halt. Diaz opens the hatch to see a tanker's worst nightmare. The Abrams is immobilized and on fire. Keeping with standard operating procedure, Diaz pulls the fire extinguisher handles and shouts, "Abandon tank." His crew jumps out of the vehicle and quickly gets to work trying to put out the fire. Aware of the situation, Schwartz goes against his orders and decides to halt the formation to try to save the tank. As more Abrams move up from behind and set up a defensive perimeter, one of Captain Jason Conroy's subordinates spots an enemy fighter and calls to him, "Sir, he's got a weapon, can I shoot him?" Conroy instantly responds, "Hell yes." The American column is taking fire from the overpass as civilian cars and trucks are still driving across, seemingly oblivious to the battle around them. Down below, Diaz and his crew, along with the battalion executive officer, frantically attempt to save the stricken Abrams, while RPG rounds skip off the ground around them. Captain Conroy continues to support the salvage operation when he spots a white truck laden with explosives screaming down the highway off-ramp towards his tank. His gunner can't train on the target fast enough as Conroy shouts into the radio, "Shoot it, shoot the damn thing." With everyone around them desperately firing on the vehicle with 50 cals and small arms, at the last second, a nearby Bradley turns its 25mm chain gun towards the truck and fires, killing the drivers and causing the vehicle to crash into the highway guardrail. The smouldering truck comes to a halt only 10 feet from Conroy's tank. Meanwhile, from his location at the newly renamed Baghdad International Airport, General Blunt has been monitoring the Thunder Run from a live feed provided by Hunter UAVs, and is increasingly concerned that the column has been stopped for so long. He orders Perkins to get moving again. At the disabled Abrams, the crew has put out the fire, and engineers are prepared to tow the tank to safety when the flames suddenly flare up again. Lieutenant Roger Gruneisen radios Captain Conroy to tell him the bad news. "It's on fire again." "What do you mean it's on fire? I thought you were putting it out." "I know," Gruneisen says, "but it caught back on fire." Perkins moves his command APC to the stricken tank and shouts at Diaz to abandon the vehicle. Two men toss thermite grenades into the turret before another Abrams fires a heat round into the tank at point-blank range, ensuring the destruction of the vehicle. Diaz and his crew hop into Lieutenant Gruneisen's tank, which continues forward with the rest of the column. The lengthy stop to support the damaged Abrams has mixed up the order of vehicles, with Bradleys, Abrams and APCs now intermixed. Lieutenant Robert Ball's Abrams is now the lead vehicle at the front of the Thunder Run, and is preparing to make the turn-off to the airport. However, the thick black smoke is obscuring his vision, and Ball misses the exit to the airport. The task force is instead headed north towards heavily defended downtown Baghdad. Luckily, Ball realises his mistake and simply orders his vehicle to pull a U-turn and plough over the median guardrails. The rest of the armoured column follows, and Ball leads them towards the correct turn-off. Lieutenant Gruneisen's Abrams is lagging behind at the back of the formation. The tank is cramped with Diaz's crew on board, which is hampering the driver's view of the road. The Abrams is struggling to catch up when the 120mm main gun, pointing towards the right side of the road, suddenly strikes a concrete bridge abatement. The sudden impact knocks the hydraulics loose and sends the turret spinning around like a top. The men inside are pinned to the steel walls as the turret spins 20 times in less than a minute, sending their rucksacks and duffel bags flying onto the road. When the turret finally comes to a rest, the disorientated crew finds they cannot fire the main gun as it has been damaged by the impact. To make matters worse, they have missed their exit, and Captain Conroy radios Lieutenant Colonel Schwartz, "I've got a tank headed into downtown Baghdad." Gruneisen is aware of his situation and searches for an area where he can turn around. His tank approaches a roundabout occupied by enemy soldiers, with multiple military trucks parked on the side of the street. With the gun useless, the only weapon with which he can fire back is the loader's M240 machine gun out of the turret roof. He orders his driver to use the roundabout to turn around. The Iraqi soldiers seem rather surprised to see a sole American tank approaching them in central Baghdad. Rather than fire back, most of the fighters throw down their weapons and run away as fast as they can from the intimidating tank approaching. Grunyson shouts, "Just keep on going, just keep on going," as a pickup truck rounds the circle and smashes directly into the front of the tank. After what seems to be an eternity negotiating the roundabout, the Abrams finally exits and hastens to rejoin the main group. The Iraqis seem so surprised that they do not pursue the lone tank. Grunyson continues forward for a few minutes until he spots another Abrams, the vehicle which had fired the heat round into Diaz's disabled tank earlier. Relieved at seeing a friendly vehicle, both tanks rejoin the correct route to try to catch up with the main column headed towards Baghdad International Airport. Enemy fire is intensifying as the column approaches the airport. A Bradley takes a direct hit from an RPG round which penetrates the armour, wounds the driver, and ruptures the fuel cells. The column once again stops, but this time the Bradley is recovered, and a new driver is able to get the vehicle moving within minutes. In Staff Sergeant Stephen Booker's tank, the 50 caliber and coaxial machine guns have jammed, increasing their vulnerability to infantry attack. Despite the danger to his life, Booker stands in the turret hatch and fires back at the enemy with his carbine. He gleefully shouts to his crew from his exposed position, "I don't want to die in this country." Suddenly, an RPG round screams in and strikes Booker directly, but it does not explode. The staff sergeant is grievously wounded. The tank stops to allow him to be evacuated by an M113, but it's no use. A veteran of Desert Storm and one of the most beloved soldiers in the battalion, Staff Sergeant Booker dies before he can make it to a field hospital. He is later posthumously awarded the Silver Star, which is then upgraded to the Distinguished Service Cross. The column is almost at the airport when Lieutenant Ball reports a large concrete barrier ahead. Desperate to reach safety, Schwartz orders Ball to smash his way through. The Abrams accelerates and drives right through the barrier, sending concrete flying. The tank lurches in the air before landing hard on the highway. The other tanks follow suit while RPG rounds continue to explode around them. Ball's gunner reports, "I have tanks." Schwartz orders the column to slow down, but the tanks are quickly identified as friendlies. Colonel Grimesley's brigade has pushed out from the airport to come to his aid. After 2.5 hours under near constant fire in the very hostile city of Baghdad, the reinforced column continues and will soon arrive at the airport. The first Thunder Run on Baghdad has suffered 1 dead, 5 wounded, 1 Abrams main battle tank lost, and a damaged Bradley. Schwartz is shaken after the experience, and goes from soldier to soldier to apologise for leading them into heavy enemy fire. Yet, General Blunt is ecstatic and declares the Thunder Run a success. He debriefs Colonel Perkins and Lieutenant Colonel Schwartz, who estimate that they have killed approximately 2,000 enemy fighters and around 30 military trucks. However, the initial goal of the Thunder Run was to demoralise the Iraqi civilians and military and shock them into defeat. This hasn't happened. Instead, Iraqi prisoners tell American interrogators that they had believed Iraqi military propaganda. A captured quartermaster colonel had been told that the coalition advance had been stopped at the Euphrates River. He believed this to be true until he drove his VW Passat into a Bradley fighting vehicle. The next Thunder Run must drive home the fact that Saddam has lost the war. General Blunt and Colonel Perkins get to work planning another Thunder Run. The following day, Iraq's second largest city of Basra falls to the British 1st Armoured Division, while the American forces around Baghdad consolidate and prepare to move into the city again. Meanwhile, the Iraqi Northern Front has collapsed, and joint American Peshmerga units are advancing south. At a safe house in Baghdad, Saddam gathers his high command for the last time. He will later be described as a man who had lost the will to resist, and knows that his regime is coming to an end. Thanks to this week's sponsor, World of Tanks. Join 100 million players online by using my link in the description to download and enjoy the game today. Thanks again to our amazing Patreons who make series like this possible. Welcome to all our new Patreons this month, and a special thanks to our Patron of the Week, Christopher Gilmet. Each week we select our favourite Patreon reactions to shout out. This week, ISAF Ace says, "With the wide 3-lane roads of Baghdad, it seems like the city was almost built for tank columns." If you'd like to support us to produce further series like this, please join our Patreon and get access to exclusive benefits such as early access to videos ad and sponsor free. We would love to have you as part of our community and really appreciate your support.